Two Geeks, Two Beers podcast. Nerdy obsessions, drunken ramblings with Morgan Jeffrey and Tom Eames.
I am Hercule Poirot. Yes, madam.
Oh, you're not a bit how I thought you'd be.
Hello and welcome to episode 98 of Two Geeks, Two Beers. I'm Inspector Tom. And with me today, he's going to be my Hastings, if you will. It's Morgan.
Inspector Tom sounds like a nickname someone would give their penis. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's right. Today, I'm going on a mini history lesson about one of fiction's most iconic sleuths. Potentially only second to Sherlock Holmes, I'd say. And regular listeners might remember that the running joke that I can't say his name properly.
Yeah, when you told me what the subject of this episode was going to be, I did think it was a bold choice, given that I and long-time listeners will know that you have struggled with Hercule in the past with Agatha Christie's mustachioed Belgian detective.
Yes. I'm doing, for some reason I thought it was a good idea to do a whole episode where I try and fail to say the name of Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. Is that it? Poirot.
Yeah, that is it. But it sounds like it's taken a lot of effort for you to. It's not that hard.
Yeah. It's similar to when I have to say my own name because
can't say your own name.
Well, when I go and sign in places, because I say Tom Eames, so many places think I'm saying Tommy.
Right.
So I've had a thing where I've signed in and I go, oh, hi, I'm here to see blah, blah, blah. And I go, oh, yeah, what's your name? Tom Eames. Okay. They call up and go, hi, I've got a Tommy here for you. And by that point, it's too late. I can't now go, oh, no. So they thought I was being such a diva and demanding that I be called Tommy as a one, like Madonna or something. And it's the same. So I have to go Tom Eames.
Or like, you're called like Tommy Eames.
Yeah.
Tommy Eames.
I get that. And written down, I get Earns a lot.
Earns.
Tom Earns.
I was saying Tom Earns.
I was saying Boo Earns.
So I'll be doing a little background about the character in general, but you're probably thinking, does this count as geek culture? Well, I'd argue when you see just how many actors have played him on screen, absolutely yes.
I'd argue it's our podcast. We do what we want, and we're not got a large enough listenership that we have to worry about disappointing our fan base.
Shush! Don't tell them. There's no point in doing a ranking of the Poirots because David Suchet is obviously going to win.
Suchet would win.
So instead, let's just look at the history of Poirot on screen and where he came. Poirot?
Oh, yeah, it is. But again, you're getting it right. But it's the way you're like Poirot. I can hear the cogs turning every time you say it. It's like it's coming up, and you're a little bit scared.
That's just my life in general. So anyway, coming up, how a Spider-Man villain once played the Belgian detective.
Yeah.
How Peter Ustinov didn't give a shit about what Agatha Christie's children thought about him. And how Christie herself couldn't stand the character. Couldn't stand him.
When, very quickly my brain went Agatha Christie. But when you said Christie, I was like, who's Christie?
What, Linford Christie?
Or no, just some girl called Christie.
Oh.
Who's like, I'm Christie Williams and I'm Poirot's biggest fan.
Okay, so do you have much memories of Poirot?
Do I have much memories of Poirot? Do you know what? Like, I had a book when I was a kid, and it was something. It was part of like a series, a collection, and each one was like pirates and had about famous pirates, and the other one was like spies and had about famous spies like James Bond, and one of them was detectives and had about Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot, and Miss Marple, and until then I'd never really heard of him. And it's something I've never massively got into. Never watched a full episode, even though I was like, well, clearly Suchet is the best. Like, I'm not going to go against popular opinion. Never watched a full episode. No. I don't think, or maybe one of David Suchet's Poirot. Never seen any Ustinov.
Well, I'm glad we're doing this episode.
Never watched Murder on the Orient Express with Finney.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Stayed away from Branagh.
Yeah.
No. So
okay.
It's going to be a Poirot odyssey for me. Yeah, I'm going to learn his Poirot origins.
So for me, I grew up. My mum in particular, but my parents, but my mum in particular, love TV crime drama. They particularly like watching ITV3. So if you're in Britain, ITV3 is kind of like the home of repeats of old British crime dramas.
Yeah.
So whenever I go home, the telly's normally on, and it's normally just on ITV3, and it's normally Poirot followed by, I don't know,
Heartbeat.
Yeah, Death in Paradise, that kind of stuff. And it's great.
It's a channel.
Lewis, that sort of thing. Inspector Morse.
It's a channel that, again, my gran, it very much appeals to a very particular age range and sort of fan base. And my gran would just sort of have the TV on all the time when I would visit, not really be watching it, but it was always ITV3, usually an old Poirot or a Heartbeat on. Yeah. And at the time, when I was a little bit younger, I was like, this is boring. Now I sort of think, is it the greatest channel ever made? It's just repeats of like old. You coined a term a few years ago, Tom, which is the laid back treat. Yeah,
which is Sunday laid back treat.
Which is like, look, we don't always want prestige TV that's going to like challenge us. I just want to kick back and watch a lovely bit of Poirot, please. Yeah.
And it did morph into shows like Poldark and things like that. But it's the Durrells.
Oh yeah, the Durrells and but like I feel like
crime dramas.
I feel like those
Midsummer Murders. That's the ultimate. Yeah.
I feel like crime dramas that aren't too harrowing, aren't too like graphic, and they're just like just like a little cozy, like being wrapped up in a little blanket with David Suchet.
Yeah, and Poirot is very much one of them. And to this day, I'll go home and it would always be on, and I get particularly annoyed because I'm used to having a certain standard of television in my house. I don't mean the programs. I mean
the set.
So I want HD. Yeah. And I want to be able to pause and fast forward telly. Right. I'm used to doing that. So when I go home, they don't have that. No. It's like watching it on a potato because it's an old show from the 90s or the 80s. Yeah. And it's not on the HD version. SD, yeah. So it looks shit. And I can't fast forward, so I have to watch all of the adverts all of the time, and it drives me mad because I'm not used to it. But anyway, that's my experience with that. And Poirot, it started off, the ITV version, which we'll get onto, it started off a bit more fun and a bit more laid back and
japes.
Whereas in later years it got a bit serious, not in a bad way, but it took it more seriously. So I think if you're going to watch Poirot on ITV3, it's probably the earlier years. You're not going to see like the later ones where it will get a bit dark.
That was just then. You might want to rewind and listen. That was the first instance where Tom totally mangled Poirot. I think you called him like Poirot.
Poirot.
Yeah, he was like, if you go back and watch Poirot. I feel like there's going to be instances of these throughout.
End up calling him Popeye and all sorts.
You're going to just call him like Poirot and Imperio and
Yeah. Well, in case you didn't know then, Hercule Poirot is a fictional Belgian detective created by British writer Agatha Christie.
And one thing, and I've probably made this up, but I feel like ITV would always, because there'd always be like a Poirot special.
Yeah.
Now I'm catching myself how I say it, every couple of years, and they would advertise it. And I feel like they would always advertise it in the same way. And I've probably like made this up, or like my brain has exaggerated it over time. But I'm sure I remember that it would always be like the voiceover guy being like, oh, David Suchet is back as everyone's favourite French detective. And then it would cut to a clip of him going, I'm not French, I'm Belgian. And it would be like that, but every time, every single time. And it's like...
I don't know if that's a false memory, but I'll try and find that clip.
I hope that's true. And like someone at ITV's like, Poirot's back. What's the promotional campaign? We're going to do that thing where the voiceover guy mistakes him for a Frenchman. And then we cut to a relevant clip where Poirot tells someone that he is in fact not French. Well, he is Belgian.
Poirot loves correcting people and... talking about himself in the first person. First person or third person? Which one's the one where you say your name out loud? So Tom is happy right now.
That you're talking about yourself in the third person.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I always forget those. Yeah. Good to know. Anyway, so Poirot is one of Christie's most famous and long-running characters, appearing in 33 novels, 2 plays, and more than 50 short stories published between 1920 and 1975. Nearly 50 years later, he's still going strong.
And maybe you'll get onto this, but that's like a 50-year period, right? So did he stay though in his own time period, like, you know, like a fly in amber, or by the end was he like in the 70s wearing flares?
Do you know what? I should have researched that. I don't think so. I think it's still in the olden days.
Right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't think it'd be great if it did go into the flares and disco and punk and shit.
Why is punk?
What is this, Sid Vicious?
Why has no one ever done, like Sherlock, the TV show, Poirot, but in the modern day.
Yeah, why not?
And you can have like a hipster mustache.
What about Poirot in the 27th century, whatever it's called?
Poirot in the 22nd century. Bring Hercule Poirot back to life. He's like, what do you do? Why have you voted Brexit? Like,
So, Poirot's name was derived from two other fictional detectives of the time.
lazy.
Marie Belloc Lowndes' Hercule Poirot and Frank Howell Evans' Monsieur Poiret or Poiret.
I just want to make clear that neither of those were Tom getting Poirot wrong.
No, that's yeah. I've probably still got them wrong.
What was the first one? Hercule
Hercule Poirot.
Popow.
Yeah.
All right.
And Monsieur Poiret, a retired Belgian police officer living in London.
Those are very similar.
I know.
Did no one sue Christie?
They didn't have that sort of problem back then. It was fine. But a more obvious influence on the early Poirot stories is that of Arthur Conan Doyle. So in an autobiography, Christie said, I was still writing in the Sherlock Holmes tradition, eccentric detective, stooge assistant with a Lestrade-type Scotland Yard detective, Inspector Japp. So for his part, Conan Doyle acknowledged basing his detective stories on the model of Edgar Allan Poe's C. Auguste Dupin. So it just, nothing's original. Everything's copied off everything else.
Well, Poe, he came up with it. Doesn't get any of the credit for it. I mean, he's a complicated character, certainly. But yeah, no one remembers Dupin.
But I'd say ever since, pretty much all TV detective dramas have sort of, they copy that main detective and their sidekick Hook.
Yeah. Started
in Sherlock Holmes, then Poirot, and they get, Morse, Jonathan Creek, whatever you want to, it's the same formula. Same formula. It just works wonders. Poirot also bears a striking resemblance to A.E.W. Mason's fictional detective, Inspector Hanaud, I'm not going to say these names right, who first appeared in the 1910 novel At the Villa Rose and predates the first Poirot novel by 10 years. So Christie's Poirot was clearly the result, it says here, of her early development of the detective in her first book, written in 1916 and published in 1920. In here, Belgium's occupation by Germany during World War I provided a plausible explanation of why such a skilled detective would be available to solve mysteries at an English country house. At the time of Christie's writing, it was considered patriotic to express sympathy towards the Belgians, since the invasion of their country had constituted Britain's justification for entering World War I.
Again, this is... If you've just tuned in, this is broadly a comedy podcast.
No, you're learning stuff as well.
Educational. Yeah. It was always meant to be educational as well.
Yeah, so I think she picked Belgium because we felt an affinity to the Belgians at the time. So Poirot first appeared in The Mysterious Affair at Styles, published in 1920, and he finished in Curtain, published in 1975. Following the latter, Poirot was the only fictional character to receive an obituary in the front page of the New York Times.
I did know that. I don't know much about Poirot, but that I did know.
By 1930, so only 10 years into it, Agatha Christie found Poirot insufferable. And by 1960, she felt that he was a detestable, bombastic, tiresome, egocentric little creep.
Wow. I mean, again, though, this happens. So Conan Doyle got bored of Sherlock Holmes, tried to kill him off. In The Final Problem, Ian Fleming tried to kill off James Bond in From Russia with Love, and then the publisher just went, nah. And they're like, what don't you like? And like, this character. What do you like? Money. Write us some more, please. Come on, Ags. Get back on it.
But yeah, the public loved him, and Christie refused to kill him off because of that, claiming that it was her duty to produce what the public liked. So, yeah, as you say. In terms of what he is like, the character Captain Arthur Hastings' first description of Poirot in the book says this. He was hardly more than 5 feet 4 inches, but carried himself with great dignity.
Oh, there we go. Now we've reached the root of why Tom wanted to do a Poirot episode.
So I am taller than Poirot, at least. But I love that. He might have only been 5 feet 4, but, he had dignity. Oh, fuck you. He's a great detective. He can be as short as he likes. His head was exactly the shape of an egg, and he always perched it a little on one side. His moustache was very stiff and military. Even if everything on his face was covered, the tips of moustache and the pink-tipped nose would be visible. The neatness of his attire was almost incredible. I believe a speck of dust would have caused him more pain than a bullet wound. Yet this quaint, dandified little man, who, I was sorry to see, now limped badly, had been in his time one of the most celebrated members of the Belgian police. Now, the limp, I think, sort of disappeared in time. I think they wrote the limp in and then just went, no one remember. It's fine. But yeah, really went long on his shortness there.
He went long on the short, is what he did.
In The Mysterious Affair at Styles, Poirot operates as a fairly conventional clue-based and logical detective, reflected in his vocabulary by two common phrases: his use of the little grey cells.
The little grey cells.
Yeah. And order and method. Hastings is irritated by the fact that Poirot sometimes conceals important details of his plans. In the Big Four novel, Hastings is kept in the dark throughout their climax. This aspect of Poirot is less evident in the later novels, partly because there is rarely a narrator to mislead. So I feel like he purposely used Hastings to kind of fuck him over a little bit.
You don't want to be kept in the dark throughout the climax, because that can be messy.
We have been there.
Not together.
Not together. Poirot focuses on getting people to talk. In the early novels, he casts himself in the role of Papa Poirot, it says here. A benign...
The what?
Papa Poirot.
Okay. Yeah, good.
A benign confessor, especially to young women, it says here. In later works, Christie made a point of having Poirot supply false or misleading information about himself or his background to assist him in obtaining information. It says here, in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, Poirot speaks of a non-existent mentally disabled nephew to uncover information about homes for the mentally unfit. In Dumb Witness, Poirot invents an elderly invalid mother as a pretense to investigate local nurses. And in the Big Four, Poirot pretends to have and poses as an identical twin brother named Achilles.
Did I ever tell you about my dad used to do that?
What did he do?
Pretend that he was his own twin brother.
Really? What, just to get out of things?
Yeah, so there was a guy who he sort of knew but didn't like. And so when he would see this guy, like he'd be walking through town and he'd run into him and this guy would be like, "Oh, Nigel, good to see you." And he'd be like, "Who are you?" And he'd be like, "Nigel, it's me." And he'd be like, "I'm Dennis." And this guy
invented Dennis.
And he eventually, and the guy was like, "Nah, come on." But he stuck to it. And my dad convinced this guy that he had a twin brother.
Hilarious.
And years, decades later, my dad would run into this guy, and then he would be like, "Oh, how?"
Pretend to be Dennis.
Well, no, but by that point, my dad had long since forgotten about the ruse.
Oh, no.
But then the guy would be like, "How's Dennis?" And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, he's great. Still definitely looks like me, and still definitely exists."
Wow. I'd love to have a twin brother. At least pretend to have a twin brother. You just get up to all sorts of japes.
Like parent trap situation.
Yeah. So Poirot is also willing to appear more foreign or vain in an effort to make people underestimate him. He admits as much here. He says, "It is true." I should give you this so you can read it.
Okay.
In your French. Hang on. I'll copy it over.
Oh, Christ. All right. Here we go. "It is true that I can speak the idiomatic English, but my friend, to speak the broken English is an enormous asset. It leads people to despise you. They say, a foreigner, he can't even speak English properly. Also, I boast. An Englishman, he says often, a fellow who thinks as much of himself as that cannot be worth much. And so you see, I put people off their guard." How was that?
That was fine. Yeah.
I've no idea where that accent originated from. I don't think it was either France or Belgium, and I apologise to just all of Europe. Really, just cover all ground.
And he also, as we said before, has a tendency to refer to himself in the third person.
The third person.
Yeah.
Time, mademoiselle, time is all that is required by Poirot.
Why do you insist on referring to yourself in the third person? It is intensely irritating.
Because, Dr. Lutz, it helps Poirot achieve a healthy distance from his genius.
The third kind.
What's the second person?
Yeah.
So the first person is like...
Yeah, what is the second person?
I don't know.
Yeah. No one talks about it anyway.
Can't be important. Wouldn't worry about it. Doesn't come up.
So in terms of his background and career, Christie was purposely vague about Poirot's origins, as he is thought to be an elderly man, even in the early novels. In an autobiography, she admitted that she already imagined him to be an old man in 1920. At the time, however, she had no idea she would write works featuring him for decades to come.
So is it like a Simpsons situation? Like he doesn't age?
I think so.
Again,
yeah.
So he's not like 100 by the time he's not in the 1970s. He's not a Sex Pistols gig.
No.
aged 100.
Sadly not. So, a former policeman, during World War I, Poirot left Belgium for England as a refugee, although he returned a few times. And in 1916, he met up with his lifelong friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, and solved the first of his cases to be published, The Mysterious Affair at Styles. It's clear that Hastings and Poirot are already friends when they meet in Chapter 2 of the novel, as Hastings tells Cynthia that he has not seen him for some years. So, Hastings is like, the
Watson.
Yeah, the Watson, the Lewis to his morse, all that kind of thing. After one case, Poirot apparently came to the attention of the British Secret Service and undertook cases for the British government, including foiling the attempted abduction of the Prime Minister. Readers were told that the British authorities had learned of Poirot's keen investigative ability from certain members of Belgium's royal family. So
he took on one case. How big was this case?
The Prime Minister was, yeah.
No, but prior to that, the case at Styles was such a big...
It was such a big hit.
Such a big deal. Not only were the Belgian royal family, which to be honest, I didn't even know Belgium had a royal family. They were like, this is fucking impressive. And then they were like, let's get on to the Secret Service. And then the Secret Service, after one case. One case. Okay.
And then after the war, Poirot became a private detective and began undertaking civilian cases. He moved into what became his home and work address, flat 203 at 56B Whitehaven Mansions, just so you know. So Hastings, a former British army officer who first meets Poirot during Poirot's years as a police officer in Belgium, and almost immediately after they both arrive in England, he becomes Poirot's lifelong friend and appears in many cases. Poirot regards Hastings as a poor private detective, not particularly intelligent, yet helpful in his way of being fooled by the criminal or seeing things the way the average man would see them, and for his tendency to unknowingly stumble onto the truth.
The thing, Hastings? Do you think Poirot concerns himself with mere thingness?
No.
No.
As a loyal, albeit somewhat naive companion, Hastings is to Poirot what Watson is to Sherlock Holmes. So, like, the capable thing that we said about Watson.
I like that you said all of that, unblinking, looking me dead in the eye, having at the start of this episode described me as the Hastings to your Poirot. So thanks for that. You really are an Inspector Tom. You're a massive Inspector Tom.
And then you have Poirot's secretary, Miss Felicity Lemon, who it says here the only mistakes she makes within the series, this is the book series anyway, are a typing error during the events of Hickory Dickory Dock and the mismailing of an electrical bill.
What did she misspell it as? Hickory Dockery, yeah.
Poirot described Miss Lemon as being unbelievably ugly and incredibly efficient. And anything that she mentioned as worth consideration usually was worth consideration. She was like, yeah, so she is clever, she is worth it, but she's fucking ugly.
Why?
What does that matter?
But also, why is anyone friends with Poirot?
Yeah.
What a dick.
He is a
Hickory
dick.
Dockery.
See why Christie hated him.
Hickory Dockery dick.
Yeah.
He really is. Like he's like, oh, this is why I keep you around. This is why I keep you around. Why does anyone keep you around, Hercule? I know he's like such a good detective that he like the royal family and the Secret Service love him. If I was Hastings or Lemon, I'd be like, we can do this ourselves. We don't need you, little shit.
You won't forget your dental appointment at 11, will you, Mr. Poirot?
Hercule Poirot does not need to go to the dentist, Miss Lemon.
And then you got Chief Inspector Japp, Scotland Yard Inspector, and appears in many of the stories trying to solve cases that Poirot is working on. So he's like, who's the equivalent in Sherlock?
Lestrade.
That's the one.
Or Gregson.
That's the one. So, Poirot portrayals. As portrayals, not betrayals, as it sounded like I just said.
Poirot
portrayals.
Poirot portrayals.
Yeah.
Okay. Portrayals.
Yeah. So let's go through a history of Poirot on screen.
There you go.
So the first portrayal of Poirot was by
Poirot. That was
Charles Lawton in a 1928 stage production.
Who's the guy from the Carry On movies? Charles Horton.
Oh, yeah. Not him. No. This was an adaptation of Christie's novel, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And then Austin Trevor was the first actor to play Poirot on screen, making his debut in Alibi in 1931. He went on to play Poirot in Black Coffee in the same year, and then Lord Edgware died in 1934. He stated that he only got the Poirot role because he could speak with a French accent.
Not a Belgian accent.
No.
They were like, it's close enough. You get the part.
So let's have a little burst of early Poirot.
Please sit down. Yes. I am familiar, of course, with your name. Mm-hmm. I understand you've come to see me on behalf of my wife.
That is so. Lady Edgware consulted me and...
She wants a divorce. I'm quite aware of that.
Her suggestion was that we should discuss the matter.
There's nothing to
It's
discuss.
not the best accent.
This was the not even a Belgian
Certainly
accent.
not.
This was the French accent that got him the role. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not even got a mustache.
He doesn't have a tash.
And he's enormous.
To understand your astonishment, Monsieur Poirot.
You mean you are willing to divorce your wife?
Certainly. She knows that perfectly well.
The boys.
Au contraire, she wrote me 6 months ago, urging the point. I've an idea she wanted to marry again. Some film actor, I believe. I wrote her at Hollywood telling her I was willing.
You wrote and told her? She never said anything about that, Poirot.
Nevertheless, I did. 6 months ago.
There you go.
That guy was doing a bad French accent.
Yeah.
He was about 6'3", didn't have a mustache, was weirdly stood next to a bloke who looked like Poirot. The guy,
yeah, the other guy,
his co-star,
the Hastings, which I assume that was.
Hastings was a short balding man with a mustache. Did they just and they were like, yeah, we've cast them, but he can do the accent. Make him switch. Just make him, but he looks nothing like Poirot.
Don't worry about it.
No one even knows who that is. It's 1934. Don't worry about it.
So 1939 saw the first American adaptation of Poirot, the murder of Roger Ackroyd again.
The merger of Roger Ackroyd, which is where he's just really into A&M acquisition and mergers.
It was a 1 hour radio play.
Radio play.
If you know, you know. Which saw Orson Welles play Poirot.
Orson Welles.
Yeah.
So was he probably like, I'm Hercule Poirot? That would be incredible.
Exactly.
And ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I think you'd like to know that we have with us in the studio tonight, as a surprise visitor, none other than the celebrated Belgian detective, Mr. Hercule Poirot.
Ladies and gentlemen, I bid you good evening.
If we had time, which we have not, I'm sure nothing would please us more than to hear from Mr. Poirot. Unfortunately...
Why unfortunately when we have here a microphone?
But, Mr. Poirot, you don't understand.
I understand only that since my arrival in your country some weeks ago, I observed that there circulates an impression of my person which I must now publicly refute. I trust that the embarrassment of my presence here tonight in Mr. Wells' studio will ensure from him an honest and lifelike portrait. It has been said that I am a little man. Regard for yourself that this is not so. I have 5 feet 2 inches of high. My head is perhaps egg-shaped, and I carry it perhaps a little to one side, the left, but my eyes shine green when I am excited. Beyond this, my mustache are the largest in Europe, and my force is in my brain and not in my feet. If these things are made clear, and Mr. Wells is a tribute to Hercule Poirot, I will be satisfied. The results of my little grey cells will speak for themselves. If you will show me where I am to sit, please. I thank you.
So there were quite a lot of radio adaptations of Poirot over the next 30 plus years and a couple of TV versions, but it wasn't really until 1974 that saw quite the game-changing year for Agatha Christie's screen adaptations. So here you had Albert Finney depicting Hercule Poirot in Murder on the Orient Express, and he was actually somehow nominated for the Best Actor BAFTA for his depiction.
Now, see, this is going to be a point of controversy for any Poirot fans that have tuned in, because I've not seen the film.
Yeah.
But from what I gather, it's probably in the Poirot canon hailed as second only to David Suchet.
Really?
Most people say it's a great,
no.
or at the very least, it's a good film.
It's a good film.
And then I had a conversation with you where you're like, it's absolutely dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. A dreadful performance.
It is.
From Finney.
Look,
a great
I
actor.
love Albert Finney.
Oh, Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Yeah, so many good films, so many good roles, but he's not Poirot.
It's an odd choice if you think about it. It would be like now, it's the equivalent, because Albert Finney was like the angry young man of the 60s, very British. It would be like casting Jack O'Connell as Poirot.
And like, I suppose before, we hadn't really had anything proper of Poirot on screen before, so there was no like, is that anything to compare it to?
You hadn't had anything proper of Poirot?
No. Proper Poirot.
You hadn't had any proper Poirot?
But again, my mum is a huge Agatha Christie fan. Yeah. She's read all the novels. Yeah. She hates the Finney version.
Wow.
And so I suppose I go along with whatever my mum says.
But do you know what though? I've not seen that film, but I feel like I would enjoy it. Albert Finney notwithstanding, because I like films where there's lots of famous people in them.
Get onto that now.
Because I find it easier to pay attention.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's just a bunch of people talking in a room, I don't care. But if it's like...
loads of actors.
If it's like George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Julia Roberts talking, I'm like, I know who all of those are. Yeah. I'm more engaged, which is why Ocean's 11 is objectively the greatest movie ever made.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's really good.
It's a great film.
So if you didn't know, the film/story features Poirot, who is asked to investigate the murder of an American business tycoon aboard the Orient Express train. It's like the ultimate Poirot novel, hence why they always start with that whenever, as we've said before.
We talked about this before.
Yeah.
It's always Murder on the Orient Express,
and
then Death on the Nile. Again,
there's been a death.
Where?
On the Nile.
We're at the point now, almost at 100 episodes.
Quoting ourselves.
And we just like got no more material. Just recite our funny jokes from
flashback episode.
4 years ago, yeah.
So the suspects are portrayed by an all-star cast. This is a really, great example of a Hollywood film going, let's just cast loads of really famous people in one film.
I was going to say, why don't they always do this? And I know why, because it'd be like hideously expensive.
Yeah.
But why don't all films just have all the famous people in them?
Yeah, why not?
Well, why not? It does make it more interesting. It's like, if there's two people in a room and they're like, like, oh, it's this great rising star and this person you've never heard of. But if it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger talking to, I don't know, Lady Gaga, I'd be more intrigued. I'd be like, yeah.
So in this film, you had Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman,
Burgers,
Sean Connery,
Connors,
John Gielgud, Vanessa Redgrave, Michael York, Jacqueline Bisset, Anthony Perkins, and Wendy Hiller. Like, what a great cast that is.
What a cast that is, an all-star.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be bored for a single second. There's always two people talking, and I know who each of them is. I'm hooked.
So up until now, Dame Agatha Christie had been quite displeased with some film adaptations of her works made in the 1960s.
He's about 6 foot tall, and that's a terrible accent. I don't know why that's how Agatha Christie speaks.
Agatha Christie talks.
You're joking, aren't you? That guy, Hercule Poirot, get out. I'm Dame Agatha Christie.
So because a few of them have been a bit crap, she was actually unwilling to sell any more film rights by the 70s.
Yeah.
When Nat Cohen, chairman of EMI Films at the time, and producer John Braben attempted to get her approval for this film, they felt it necessary to have Lord Mountbatten of Burma, Lord Mountbatten.
From The Crown?
From The Crown. What's his name? Greg Wise. And the other one.
Isn't it Charles Dance?
Charles Dance takes over, yeah.
I'm picturing Charles Dance.
Charles Dance had to get him involved and his Braben's father-in-law, essentially, that's why he was involved, to help them broach the subject. So in the end, according to Christie's husband, Max Mallowan, he said, Agatha herself has always been allergic to the adaptation of her books by the cinema, but was persuaded to give a rather grudging appreciation to this one. So she went along with it. Christie's biographer, Gwen Robbins, quoted her as saying, "It was well made except for one mistake.
Casting Albert Finney.
It was Albert Finney.
Are you joking?
As my detective Hercule Poirot. I wrote that he had the finest moustache in England, and he didn't in the film. I thought that was a pity. Why shouldn't he?" So her annoyance was not the acting, but the tash.
Thank God she didn't live to see Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
If she wasn't already dead, that would have finished her off.
Cast members eagerly accepted upon first being approached. Lumet went to Sean Connery first, who admitted that he had been stupidly flattered by Lumet, saying that if you get the biggest star, the rest will come along. So they went to Sean first.
But do you think they went to everyone and was like, look,
you're the first.
You're the first. You're the biggest star. We need you to get all the other people on board.
Christie, who died 14 months after the release of the film, stated that this and the film of Witness for the Prosecution were the only movie adaptations of her books that she liked. I mean, she never got to see Suchet, never got to see Ustinov. But she quite liked this in the end. So at least there's that. So let's have a trailer of the Finney era, shall we?
The Finneyverse. Imagine now if they did like Enter the Poirot verse, and it was like Finney, Ustinov, and Suchet, and they all teamed up.
Yeah, I'd watch it.
I'd watch it. Oh, this is in an HD. You must be fuming.
This is no ordinary train. This is the legendary Orient Express, witness to many strange adventures and foreign intrigues. From Istanbul to Calais.
Now, don't get me wrong, but the most intriguing thing here is that there's been a murder on the train, not just that it's a nice train.
Oh yeah,
which seems to be what this trailer is so far hooking this on. It's a great
train.
So this is a great train.
Agatha Christie's brilliant Belgian detective.
Belgians? I always thought you were French.
Albert.
See, they always do it every time.
Hercule Poirot. This is no ordinary mystery.
Can't touch nothing.
This is Agatha Christie's most perfect crime. Murder on the Orient Express. Starring the greatest cast of suspicious characters ever involved in murder.
The murderer is with us now. You can identify the murderer?
Lauren Bacall.
I mean nothing of the kind. I mean there was a man in my compartment last night.
Monsieur.
Martin Balsam.
Oh, nice.
Thou shalt not kill.
Ingrid Bergman. Jacqueline Bisset.
He makes it sound like a poison.
Jean-Pierre Cassel.
Monsieur Hercule Poirot.
Sean Connery.
Nice.
How did you know? Beddoes.
John Gielgud.
Connery's got a mustache not unlike Branagh's.
Yeah.
The butler did.
Wendy Hiller.
You never smile, Madame Defensive.
My doctor has advised against it.
Anthony Perkins.
Perko.
Seems like I'm kind of incriminating myself.
Vanessa Redgrave.
Not now. Not now. When it's all over, when
Connery.
it's behind us.
Classic.
Rachel Roberts.
And I
Richard Widmark.
show you this.
Michael York.
Yes.
Basil Expedition.
Basil Expedition?
Oh dear, I've got that wrong, haven't I? Exposition.
Did you think it was Expedition all these years?
No, yeah.
yeah.
It's so over the top. Why has he got a hunch?
Murder
Is he limp?
on the Orient Express.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good watch. It's worth watching. So next up, it came 1978's
Death on the Nile.
Death on the Nile, yeah.
Sorry, that took me longer than it should have done.
Which was technically a sequel to Orient Express. It was a sequel to the first film, apparently.
But recast, right?
But recast. So totally different actor playing Poirot. And for me, it's the second best Poirot.
That is controversial.
Because I don't think everyone agrees with me on this one. Peter Ustinov.
Doesn't look the part, really.
No, but he plays it
more so than that lanky streak of piss with a terrible French accent and no mustache.
Yeah, but he plays it well. He does it justice. So the film features the Belgian detective alongside an all-star supporting cast that includes Maggie Smith, Angela Lansbury, Betty Davis, Mia Farrow, David Niven, George Kennedy, and Jack Warden. Amazing.
Another great cast.
Another great cast.
Yeah.
This one takes place in Egypt in 1937, mostly on a period paddle steamer on the Nile.
You would hope so.
So Albert Finney, he was asked to come back, but he didn't want to undergo the heavy makeup required for Poirot in the Egyptian sun.
Fair.
The producers felt that if they couldn't get Finney, they should go for a totally different direction, and they picked Peter Ustinov.
It's like Albert Finney made him look quite like Poirot, going a totally different direction. Someone who looks nothing like Poirot.
But sounds more like him.
Right.
Poirot is a character part, if there ever was one, said producer Richard Goodwin, and Peter is a top character actor. Christie's daughter, Rosalind Hicks, observed Ustinov during rehearsal and said, "That's not Poirot, isn't it at all like that?" And Ustinov overheard and said, "He is now."
Fair enough. He stuck to his guns.
Yeah. It's like, fuck you, I'm Peter Ustinov, do what I want. Anyway, here's a trailer for Ustinov's first turn. Poirot.
Is this one going to be like, the Nile, what a great river.
The best river.
Incidentally, it's seen so much, so many boats. Incidentally, also a death on it. Like, you're kind of bearing the lead.
Murder. Now,
straight to the point. Fair play.
Brilliant detective of all time, Hercule Poirot, on a mysterious journey down the Nile.
The Nile.
To the great wonders of the world, where the biggest wonder of them all is who done it.
I feel the presence of evil all about me.
Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile, starring Peter Ustinov.
With this, it's the exercise of the little grey cells.
And 9 star suspects. Betty Davis.
You perfectly foul French upstart.
Belgian upstart, please.
There you go. Did it
always.
Barrow.
I just want to put this gun right against her head and then have it so gently. Pull the trigger.
Angela Lansbury.
You see, I know all.
Angela Lansbury has looked the same forever.
Oh, yeah.
Putting that out there. Don't know what she's drinking, the blood of virgins or something.
Why should I kill Mrs. Doyle?
George Kennedy. You can't.
Oh, I love George Kennedy.
Underrated.
Cool Hand Luke.
Jack Warden.
So now you think that I?
Olivia Hussey. Lois Childs in Agatha Christie's
Jackie!
In Agatha Christie's Jackie.
On the Nile.
Death
Look,
on the Nile.
I see it. Everybody could have done it. And everybody had a reason for doing it.
Of course. So you think you know, huh?
I know. This place is beginning to resemble a mortuary.
You see, we have been running in the wrong direction, you and I. We know almost all there is to know. Except that what we know seems incredible.
It's incredible.
Preposterous.
Outrageous.
Anyway, we didn't really talk about it at the time, but we all know how Murder on the Orient Express ends, don't we? You're not going to ruin it for people who haven't seen it. But.
No, but my girlfriend doesn't know how it ends. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
It's just one of those bits of information. I feel like everyone never read it, never seen it, just know how it ends.
Well, it's like I've still not seen The Mousetrap on the West End, and the whole point of The Mousetrap is you don't tell anyone how it ends, so I have no idea.
I have no idea how
so
it ends.
I look forward to one day seeing it. Anyway, what do you think of that?
Yeah, do you know what? Like the look of it. Again, I wasn't bored. I was like, who's that? David Niven, Angela Lansbury. Great.
Yeah.
Having a conversation.
Great.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
So after that, a third film came out in 1982 with Ustinov returning, Evil Under the Sun. So sadly, this wasn't a commercial success at all. grossing just $6 million against its $10 million budget.
Oh.
But it had a great cast. You know, Jane Birkin and Maggie Smith, different roles. Plus the likes of... So they came back, but it was different roles.
Recast. It's like a repertory company.
Yeah.
Right.
James Mason, Diana Rigg, Roddy McDowall. Great cast.
Oh, you know I love Roddy McDowall.
Bon appétit, Monsieur Poirot. Merci, Hyacinthe.
Look at him. He's got a mustache.
I do not think that formal introductions are necessary.
Oh, it's one of those trailers where he talks to you.
I love these kind of trailers.
Hercule Poirot.
Why is he tucking into like a massive dessert?
He's got loads of like lady fingers in a trifle.
A description with which I find it.
I don't think Poirot would eat that.
No. I'd like to see though. I'd like to see Hercule Poirot in the 1970s meeting a punk band called Ladyfingers.
My vacation on an Adriatic island so remote as to be unknown even to the guide Michelin.
I hope you haven't come here to practice your sleuthing games on my guests. They've all got far too many skeletons in their cupboards.
Maggie Smith, she's back.
My wife, that's all there is to it.
Till death do you part. Even in those days, she could always throw her legs up in the air higher than any of us. And wider.
All right. This was the early 80s.
Patrick, aren't you getting a little tired of rowing?
I'm so sorry. Are we late? Patrick insisted upon rowing me right around the island. It's much bigger than I thought, poor darling. He's absolutely exhausted.
Not in the least surprised.
Saucy.
Yeah. Right, come on, let's go on to the crime.
She's been murdered.
She's been murdered. She's been murdered. Oh.
Give it to me.
Do you know what I'm most sick of in this place?
What, madame?
Pity. I can't bear to be pitied.
Oh, my. I'm the last to arrive.
I'm sorry, sir.
How should we promote this film? Just a series of unconnected scenes?
Yeah, it's not the best trailer in the world, I've got to say.
You strangled her.
That is poppycock. That is poppycock.
That is poppycock.
Carefully. A bathing cap, a bath, a bottle, a wristwatch, the diamond, the noonday gun, the breath of the sea, and the height of the cliff.
So Ustinov stayed in the role. He made, even after that, wasn't much of a success. He came back for 3 made-for-TV films, which I didn't know existed. So he did those 2 big films.
Yeah.
And he did 3 films on telly. 1985's 13 at Dinner, which also starred Bill Nighy, Faye Dunaway, and a certain David Suchet as Inspector Japp. Would you believe?
I wonder whatever happened to him.
Yeah. 1986's Murder in 3 Acts, which also starred Tony Curtis. And 1986 as well, Dead Man's Folly, which didn't really have anyone. He then returned again, one more time, this time in 1988 with the actual feature film, Appointment with Death. So he did another proper film, also starring Lauren Bacall, Carrie Fisher, John Gielgud, and David Soul. David Soul!
Starsky or Hutch.
Yeah, one of them. So yeah, so he did a lot more. He believed in the role, Ustinov. He went for it.
I like that he stuck to his guns. He proved that, do you know what? That is what Poirot's like now.
Yeah.
He kind of, and also he went out on a high.
Yeah.
They were like, right, we need an all-star cast again. David Soul, that'll do.
Yeah, fine. So a year later, after that though, after Ustinov's final turn as Poirot, saw the finest version of the detective. I don't think anyone could disagree with that, really. As David Suchet took on the role in a new series for ITV called simply Agatha Christie's Poirot.
Only a year later?
Yeah. So, like in 1989, that's when it started. The programme in the end ran for 13 series and 70 episodes in total. Each episode was adapted from a novel or short story that featured Poirot. As the programme's conclusion, which finished with Curtain, Poirot's Last Case, which is based on the 1975 novel Curtain. Every single major literary work by Christie that featured Poirot had been adapted.
Did them all.
So that is amazing. They did every single one, which is what Suchet always wanted. So let's have a burst of the show's intro with the brilliant music from Christopher Gunning. It was either this or Touch of Frost.
Do you know, I was just thinking, this is great, but it also is just Touch of Frost.
Yeah.
Never seen an episode of Touch of Frost.
Really?
But it used to come on probably on ITV3, watch the title sequence, which is incredible.
Yeah.
David Jason closes the cell door, little smirk, and then I turn over.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've seen the best bit.
Now, this is fine, for a TV show made in 1989. This wasn't the title sequence, surely, in like 2000 and...
No, it did change over the years, yeah. It stayed for quite a while, though.
Jazzy.
Very nice. So Suchet was recommended for the part by Christie's family, who had seen him appear as Blot in the TV adaptation of Tom Sharp's Blot on the Landscape. Not one that I'm familiar with.
Probably not future episode fodder.
Suchet, a method actor, said that he prepared for the part by reading all of the Poirot novels and every short story and copying out every piece of description about the character.
Now that is impressive research. I'm not really sure that's method. I feel like to be method, you'd have to like
become the character,
live as a Belgian detective, grow a mustache, and like solve a murder. That would be method. Lackluster.
He later told the Strand magazine, "What I did was I had the."
What? So, David, how did you prepare for this? So what I did was...
That's what it says here. What I did was I had my file on one side of me and a pile of stories on the other side, and day after day, week after week, I ploughed through most of Agatha Christie's novels about Hercule Poirot and wrote down characteristics until I had a file full of documentation of the character. And then it was my business not only to know what he was like, but to gradually become him.
All right.
I had to become him before we started shooting. During the filming of the first series, Suchet almost left the production during an argument with the director, insisting that Poirot's odd mannerisms, in this case putting a handkerchief down before sitting on a bench, be featured. He later said there's no question that Poirot is obsessive compulsive. So he would come up with these little mannerisms, and the director was like, don't do that. What are you doing? That wasn't written. Fuck you, I know what I'm doing. I'm Poirot. According to many critics and enthusiasts, Suchet's characterization is considered to be the most accurate interpretation of all the actors to have played Poirot, and is the closest to the character in the books.
I mean, he's not got a lot of competition.
I mean, not really.
If it's
just Ustinov, it's Finney.
If it's that tall bloke, Albert Finney hamming it up, or Peter Ustinov tucking into his ladyfingers. I mean, but don't get me wrong. Very, very good. Very good.
In 2013, Suchet revealed that the Christie's daughter, Rosalind Hicks, had told him that she was sure Christie would have approved of his performance. In 2007, Suchet spoke of his desire to film the remaining stories in the canon and hoped to achieve this before his 65th birthday in May 2011. And despite speculation of cancellation earlier in 2011, it was announced later that year that the remaining books would be adapted. The remaining books would be adapted into a 13th series to be filmed in 2012. The remaining books were finally adapted in 2013 into 5 episodes, from which curtain aired in November. And the 2013 television special, Being Poirot, centered on Suchet's characterization and his emotional final episode.
And I interviewed David Suchet.
Did you?
Yeah, for the final series of Poirot.
Oh.
Got to talk to him about the fact that he was leaving the role after so long. And I remember he said it was like saying goodbye to a dear old friend. Had never seen an episode of Poirot. But I
don't tell him that.
But it's one of those things though, where it's like I don't feel like you almost need to have seen it. It's because it's such a part of like when you've been doing it for like 20 years or whatever, like he had been doing, or about 30. It becomes such a part of. It's like like obviously I can talk about like Sherlock Holmes to someone because you just know it, even if you've never like actually sat down and watched an episode.
Yeah. So let's just have a little burst of. It's like a trailer, so just get a little taste of David Suchet in the role.
Mesdames, Messieurs, I give to you Hercule Poirot. He is the greatest detective in the world. I will visit the scene of the crime. This is not one of your detective fictions. We must deal here only with the truth.
Who can have done these dreadful things?
Poirot will discover all, madame.
So you know who the murderer is?
It is unwise to conceal matters from Poirot.
Referring to himself there in the...
we just watched that in dead silence because it was just...
reverence. Yeah.
So there we go. And then in 2017, Murder on the Orient Express made yet again. This time with Kenneth Branagh as a detective, which he also directed.
You said Kenneth Branagh?
Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh.
Or Kenneth Branagh, like in EastEnders.
He's the long-lost Ken Branagh, the long-lost.
They had a pretty decent cast, though. It also starred Penelope Cruz, Willem Dafoe, Judi Dench, Johnny Depp, Josh Gad, Derek Jacobi, Leslie Odom Jr., Michelle Pfeiffer, and Daisy Ridley.
I feel like they know now. It's like if you're doing...
You're going to do it.
In particular, Murder on the Orient Express, you've got to get the all-star cast.
Not sure about his Tash, but overall, it was a good adaptation, I'd say. You know, surely everyone by now knows how it ends.
Well, apparently not.
And a sequel is on the way, and as you say, it is Death on the... And at the very end of Murder on the Express, he kind of gets a phone call, and he's like, there's... Hercule, we need you. Why? There's been a death.
Where?
On the Nile. And then it goes... It's like almost might as well say Hercule Poirot will return.
He was murdered.
God. Murder here.
God rest his soul. Someone was rummaging around my cabin in the middle of the night. No one would listen to me.
If there was a murder,
What is going on?
then there was a murderer. The murderer is with us. And every one of you is a suspect.
And who are you?
My name is Hercule Poirot, and I am probably the greatest detective in the world.
So, other adaptations of Poirot, just a couple of other mentions. Hugh Laurie played him in Spice World.
What?
Yeah.
So I've never seen Spice World, strike me down. Does Hugh Laurie plays the character Poirot?
Yeah. Let's just load it up now for you.
All right.
Is you got this dead cute little smile, so you can get away with anything.
Alors, ladies and gentlemen, 4 horrible moments perpetrated by the same ruthless psychopath. Each victim...
I have no idea what's going on here. It's a flashback in Spice World. That's all you need to know.
But who is it? Professor Schutzman?
Was this a film?
Spice World, the film.
No, I know, but it looks like it was like a comic relief sketch.
It is a glorified comic relief sketch, yeah.
Why is the quality... It doesn't sound like you, but why is it quality so bad?
Father Colin Murphy!
I mean, saying that, I'd love to watch Hugh Laurie play Poirot.
If he did it
as a full-length thing.
Again, he's too lanky.
And then in 2001, a somewhat dodgy adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express. I'll say that fucking again, come on, mate.
Fucking hell, come on, mine.
And in 2001, a somewhat dodgy adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express was released on US TV, this time with Alfred Molina.
I mean, that's good casting though, right?
I guess so.
I guess so.
One other scenario. Perhaps not as believable at first glance, perhaps too fanciful to be accepted. Would you like to hear it?
Well, sure. I guess.
Good. Please resume your seat. This new scenario rests on the assumption that everything I've just said was a lie. That this phantom conductor never really existed at all.
He looks
that
pretty
he was
good.
created solely to provide
Why is he so trendy?
He does look like a trendy Poirot. I mean, Molina's just cool, isn't he?
I'll tell you, my friend, and you and the others will judge. As I said, certain questions have yet to be answered, but I am struck by the fact that several passengers on this train seemingly had close relationships with
But this has the vibe. You remember the Kelsey Grammer Scrooge that they did on a US TV?
Dreadful.
It has that vibe. No other famous people in it.
No.
Not just Mr. McQueen, who knew the late Mrs. Armstrong.
Anyway, got the idea of it. And then 2018 saw the BBC's ABC Murders, starring John Malkovich, of all people. I didn't watch it, but it had decent reviews.
I watched it.
Yeah. So you watched that? You have not seen any of the David Suchets, but you've seen that.
It was on at Christmas. I watched any old shit at Christmas. And
my mum wasn't impressed.
Well, it was very much like dark and gritty Poirot, which
did he have a tache?
He had a goatee because apparently no one has a tache. Like a tache is not gritty, is it? So but I was worried about Malkovich because I was like, is he gonna do a Malkovich? It was actually all right. Yeah, it wasn't a bundle of fun. Do you know who was good in it? Weirdly, Rupert Grint playing Jap. Really good.
That's good to know. Yeah. Well, that's about it, though, then, for our journey through the history of Poirot. And like Sherlock, it shows just how much staying power he has, considering that he's still going strong today with Death on the Nile coming out next year as we record this.
Starring actual human cannibal, Armie Hammer.
Oh, yes. I think he had too serious a role to just sort of wipe him out in the film. So it's like, let's just hope that by then it's sort of boiled over, as it were.
Boiled over like the limbs of his victims that he's cooking on a pot.
Like his pot. Anyway, thoughts?
Do you know what? I think we've talked about this before. I like things that are big. When there's a film franchise or a TV show and there's like loads of it, I almost see it like a challenge.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to just like binge all of it.
Yeah.
And I feel a bit like with Suchet's Poirot in particular, I feel like one day I will get the box set, or if it's on BritBox or something, like I'm already paying £5 a month just to watch classic Doctor Who. I might as well make the most of it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sit down and watch from the first episode all the way through to curtain.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and it's worth watching the Ustinov films, I think, and even the Finney film for a laugh. You know, it's worth watching. It's a good cast. Sean Connery and anything. You know, have a good time. So that is it. Thanks for listening. For more claptrap about random subjects, ranging from anything from the Sega Mega Drive to Animals of Farthingwood, then head to 2geeks2beers.com or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere now. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Global Player, all sorts, sorted.
If you're an Agatha Christie fan or like a Poirot fan who's just tuned into this podcast and you want to hear another episode about the Sega Mega Drive, we've got you covered.
Look, we've got range. And please let us know how you like to listen and where and when. We'd love to know. And also, I need to mention yet again, we are soon going to be recording our 100th episode, and we want as much correspondence as humanly possible, even if we only have 3. We just want any kind of communication between you and us.
We just want human contact,
just
man.
Let us know. Give us any questions you want about how we record the show, any opinions you want us to give opinions on any kind of geek culture, anything whatsoever, any kind of memories or stories you've got about stuff we've talked about in the past, literally anything. We'd love to hear from you.
Literally anything.
And we'll build a whole show around it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So please do contact us. You can email us at podcast@2geeks2beers.com. That's TWO each time. Or on our social channels, which is at 2geekscast, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yes, and you can also support the show by becoming a patron, patreon.com/2geekscast. There's all kinds of tiers there, depending on how much you pay. You can support us in different ways, and you get all kinds of good stuff. Like even the most basic level, you get little preview clips and exclusive Patreon-only mini-sodes and outtakes. Such a good offering. But if you pay a little bit more, you get an exclusive mini-sode that's just for you on a topic of your choosing. A little bit more, you get a full-length episode that is exclusive to you, again, on a topic, whatever you want us to talk about, within reason. Keep it geek culture-based, ideally. And everything, any money you donate goes back into our recording sessions and paying for our equipment and supporting the podcast.
Well, that is it for now. We'll be back next time, perhaps with a Christmas special about a certain one-off TV series from the 80s. So we'll let you use your detective skills to see if you can guess what that is. So for now, au revoir.
That's not Belgian, it's French.
Sorry, Hercule, sorry.
Sacre bleu.
So we didn't rank the Poirots.
We did not rank the Poirots.
But you know what we could do?
Rank the Poirots?
Rank the taches.
Oh.
So we've got, I'm going to only do 4. Okay, so we've got Finney, Ustinov, Suchet, and Branagh.
Yeah.
So what's your order of your favourite taches of the 4?
So who we got again?
From memory, you've got Finney,
Ustinov,
Suchet, Branagh.
Well, it depends what you mean. So
let's go for taches you would like to sport.
All right. In that case, Finney, there's not a lot in it between Finney and Suchet.
No, they're quite similar. Suchet's very well coiffed, but small.
I don't want that Branagh nonsense anywhere near my face, let alone on my face. Yeah. So I think it's
Ustinov.
It feels sort of neat and the neatest, the tidiest, the least offensive. Yeah. I feel like if I was gonna tuck into some lady fingers, that's probably, it wouldn't get.
That is a dessert, by the way. If you don't know what that is,
it wouldn't get. Yeah, like people like in America, like it's I feel like that wouldn't get in. That wouldn't get in the way. The fuzz. If I was tucking into some lady fingers, that face fuzz would not get in the way. What about you?
I probably have to go for Suchet just for the coughness of it all. It's very very well kept together.
Yeah.
And you get a little comb out and a little pair of scissors.
I'll be honest, mate. If you had that mustache,
we should have recorded today with fake mustaches, so we could have filmed it.
You would. You would be a dead ringer for. You've already got the height, and then. Yeah, just get
a few more beers and I'll have the same.
You'll have the limp,
the portly belly,
and the hunch.
Yeah. Anyway.